You know that feeling at the airport? Maybe you're excited, but there's also that little niggle, that sort of invisible weight of flying the carbon footprint. It's a question so many of us have. How do we balance this amazing thing, travel, with, well, the environmental side?
It's a really common feeling. And look, the environmental cost of aviation is significant. That's just a fact.
Yeah.
But, and this is important, while it's a real issue, there are actually tangible things we can do. It's not necessarily about finding some perfect guilt-free solution overnight. It's more about taking responsibility in a meaningful way rather than just feeling, stuck or overwhelmed by it.
Exactly. And that's what we want to get into today. So for this deep dive, we've gathered quite a bit of material, different sources, to really unpack what carbon offsetting actually means. Why does it matter? And crucially, how can you, practically make it part of your travel routine? We're hoping to share some really actionable insights, maybe even a few surprising things about tackling the impact of flying. So yeah, let's get started.
Sounds good.
Okay, so our sources really dig into why flying has such a big climate impact.
Yeah.
Obviously, planes burn fossil fuels, but what's the core issue they highlight beyond just that?
Well, yeah, the fossil fuel part is fundamental, absolutely. And one stark point that comes up again and again is how a single return flight, say long haul, can potentially wipe out months of your other eco-friendly efforts, recycling, diet changes, all that.
Right. That really puts it in perspective.
It does. But there's another layer. Aviation is about, 2.5% of global co-Euro emissions, which sounds like maybe not a huge slice compared to some other sectors, but the impact is disproportionately higher. And the fascinating or maybe worrying reason why is that the effect gets amplified way up there at high altitudes.
Oh, so?
Well, those emissions aren't just co-Euros. When they're released high in the atmosphere, they form contrails, those white streaks you see, and trigger other atmospheric effects, non-CO2 effects, that trap more heat. So the overall warming impact is significantly greater than if you just release that same co-Euro down here at ground level.
Wow, okay.
And again, the point isn't to make people feel terrible. Flying is sometimes just necessary, right? For work, family, really important life events. It's more about understanding that because of this magnified impact, there's a kind of magnified responsibility that comes with it.
That high altitude point, it really does underline the need for solutions. So, okay. With that responsibility in mind, let's tackle the big one. What is carbon offsetting? It sounds a bit, abstract sometimes.
Yeah, it can. I think the simplest way to think about it is like a balancing act.
Okay.
You acknowledge the emissions your flight creates. You can't just wish them away. And then you deliberately invest in projects somewhere else in the world that are actively working to reduce overall global emissions. That could be, say, funding a wind farm that replaces a coal plant. Or it could be investing in projects that actually absorb co-Euros from the atmosphere, like planting trees or restoring forests. So it's basically a mechanism for taking ownership of those unavoidable emissions from your flight.
Right, a balancing act. I like that.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's the idea. Now, the practical side, someone listening is thinking, okay, I get it, I want to do this, where do I start? How do you actually go about offsetting a flight?
Yeah.
You see those options when you book sometimes.
You do, yeah. And that's often the first step, calculating your impact. Many airlines offer a calculator and an offsetting option right there at checkout, which is definitely convenient. But you can also use independent online tools. Sources mention ones like Carbon Footprint or My Climate. You just plug in your route details.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's worth knowing that your class matters. Business class generally means a bigger footprint per person than economy because you take up more space.
Yeah.
That gets factored in.
Ah, okay, good job.
So once you have that number, usually it's given in tons of euros.
Yeah.
The next step is choosing where that money goes. And this is really crucial because you want to make sure you're funding reputable schemes. Our sources really stress looking for projects that are certified by independent nonprofit standards bodies. The big ones are often Gold Standard or Verified Carbon Standard, VCS.
Why is that certification so important? Is it about avoiding, like, greenwashing?
Exactly that. Greenwashing is basically making something look environmentally friendly when the actual impact is minimal or even non-existent. These certifications act as a quality control. They verify that the project is real, that the emission reductions are measurable and permanent, and this is key, that the project wouldn't have just happened anyway without the offset funding. It has to be additional.
Got it. So what kinds of projects do these certified schemes typically support? Can you give some examples?
Oh, it's quite a range. You see a lot of reforestation and forest preservation projects protecting those vital carbon sinks.
Makes sense.
Then there's a big focus on clean energy. funding solar farms, wind turbines, small hydro projects, things that directly displace fossil fuel generation. You also find projects providing clean cook stoves to communities that rely on burning wood or charcoal indoors, which reduces emissions and has huge health benefits. Or even things like capturing methane, a potent greenhouse gas, from landfill or agricultural operations.
So quite diverse.
Very diverse, and transparency is key. The good schemes will tell you exactly which project your money is supporting and how they track the impact. One person in our sources shared a quote, something like, "I once paid to offset without checking the details. Lesson learned to transparency matters."
Yeah, that really hits home. You need to know where it's going. But this brings us to maybe the biggest question, the one I bet a lot of listeners have. Okay, but does it really make a difference? You hear skepticism, right? People saying it's just a license to pollute, or it lets people feel good without changing behavior. How do the sources tackle that?
It's a really valid point, and it's important to be crystal clear here. Offsetting is not a free pass. It doesn't magically erase the emissions from your plane. You took the flight, those emissions happened, period.
Right.
However, what offsetting does do is it channels money, often significant amounts, towards climate solutions that genuinely need funding and might not get off the ground otherwise. So think of it less as canceling out the harm perfectly and more as making a concrete contribution towards progress elsewhere.
Okay, contribution to progress, not erasure.
Exactly. And it tackles that license to pollute criticism because of the additionality requirement we talked about. The money has to fund extra emission reductions or removals that wouldn't have happened anyway. So yes, ideally we need fewer flights, absolutely. But we also undeniably need more forests growing, more clean energy being built, more support for communities adapting to climate change. Offsetting helps fund that side of the equation.
That framing helps a lot, I think. So if we accept it as a contribution, how do we make it, well, less of an afterthought and more routine? How do you make offsetting just another part of planning a trip, like booking a hotel?
It really can become that, just a small, standard step. The simple approach our sources suggest is calculate your flight's emissions before you even book, or right after. Then factor the cost of offsetting into your total travel budget, just like you budget for accommodation or food. Then pick a certified project you feel good about, maybe something focused on an area you care about, like biodiversity or clean water. And then if you want, you could even keep a little personal log. Track the projects you support. Maybe see how your travel footprint changes over time as you make different choices. Seeing that tangible connection can be quite motivating.
And it sounds like the impact isn't always just about carbon, is it? Sometimes there are other benefits.
Oh, absolutely. Many high-quality offsetting programs specifically aim for these co-benefits. So beyond reducing Kyoros, they might also be supporting biodiversity protection, creating jobs for local communities, improving education access, or providing clean water sources. It becomes part of creating a sort of broader positive footprint. You really can look for projects that resonate with you personally. Maybe it's forest conservation in the Amazon. Maybe it's supporting wind power in Africa. Maybe it's something closer to home like urban rewilding or peatland restoration, like that example from Tom in our sources. He mentioned knowing his offset helped restore peatlands in Scotland, supporting a whole ecosystem. So where your money goes can have these multiple positive ripples.
That's really encouraging. But it all circles back to that crucial question, does it? The one we probably all know the answer to deep down.
Isn't it just better to fly less?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Let's be completely honest about that. Reducing the number of flights you take is, without a doubt, the single most impactful thing you can do.
Yeah.
Offsetting is valuable, it's important, but it's fundamentally second best to not generating the emissions in the first place.
Right. So that means really thinking, can I take a train instead? Can I combine 2 trips into one longer one later? Do I really need to fly to that conference, or can I attend virtually? It's about making those conscious choices whenever possible. It's not about never flying again for most people, but as one person put it quite well, I still get on planes. I just think harder about when and why.
Think harder about when and why.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so fly less first. But when flying is the choice, what are some other practical things people can do, according to our sources, to minimize their footprint beyond offsetting?
Yeah, there are definitely other things. Flying direct is a big one whenever you can. Takeoffs and landings use a disproportionate amount of fuel, so avoiding connections helps.
Oh, okay.
Choosing airlines that operate newer, more fuel-efficient aircraft can make a difference too, though that info isn't always easy to find. And then there's packing light. It might sound small, but every extra kilo on board means slightly more fuel burn over the whole flight. It adds up.
Packing light, really. Interesting.
Yeah. And then just the simple stuff on board. Bringing your own reusable water bottle, maybe some cutlery if you know you'll get a meal, your own headphones instead of taking the plastic wrapped airline ones, saying no to printing a boarding pass if you have it on your phone, skipping the little plastic amenity kits if you don't need them. It's all those small, mindful choices that reduce waste and collectively contribute to a slightly lighter impact.
It all adds up.
Yeah.
That's great practical advice. Now, shifting slightly, there's a sensitive aspect here. How do you talk about this stuff flying, environmental responsibility with kids, with the next generation?
That's a really thoughtful question. The sources suggest approaching it gently, focusing on responsibility rather than, doom or guilt. Explain that our choices have impacts, even small ones, and they add up. You could frame it around fairness, like if we enjoy this amazing thing, flying to see grandma, or exploring a new place, it's fair to also give something back, to help balance things out. Planting trees through an offset project could be a concrete example they understand. Kids often graft that sense of fairness quite well, and it helps them feel like they can be part of making things a little bit better, rather than just feeling worried.
That makes a lot of sense. Focus on fairness and
Yeah.
positive action. Okay, so wrapping things up, if someone's listened to all this and is thinking, right, I want to start doing this, what's the simple path forward? What are the key takeaways?
I think it boils down to a few core things. First, fly less when you realistically can. That's always number one.
Right.
Second, for the flights you do take, offset them, but do it properly. Choose certified, transparent projects. Third, look for projects that maybe align with your values, ones you believe in beyond just the carbon. And fourth, just generally travel lighter and more mindfully. Pack less, bring reusables. The overall philosophy really is progress over perfection, always.
Progress over perfection. That feels like a good mantra. Because you're right, flying has an environmental cost, that's clear. But doing nothing or feeling paralyzed by it also has a cost.
Exactly.
This deep dive really shows that while offsetting isn't some magic wand, it is a meaningful tool. It directs resources to vital climate action, especially when it's combined with conscious choices about how and when we fly.
Precisely. It's part of the solution mix.
So the skies aren't going to change instantly, but maybe every tree planted through an offset, every bit of funding for clean energy, every time someone chooses the train instead or just packs a little lighter, it does add up. And perhaps just by listening today, by asking these questions and wanting to understand, you, the listener, are already on the right path.